I'm Sumit Pava. I'm the moderator of the session. And as more people are coming in, let me just play an introductory video on the topic. Allow me a second. Join me in welcoming the esteemed panelists today. We have with us Dr. K.S. Ravichandran. Dr. K.S. Ravichandran is a Bachelor of Law and Fellow Company Secretary in practice since 1994. Dr. Ravichandran is an expert in corporate laws, securities laws, forex laws, IPR, etc., and regularly represents clients before regulators and tribunals such as NCLT, NCLAT, CCI, IPAB, etc. Dr. Ravichandran is a member of several industry bodies, chambers of commerce, members of Secretarial Standards Board, and an author of several books on corporate laws, the latest one being on CSR and ESG, and has written thousands of articles on several topics. So welcome, Dr. Chandran, to the forum today. Now we have Mr. Ajay Jaiswal. Mr. Ajay Jaiswal is the Head of Compliance and ESG of IIFL Home Finance Limited. Ajay is a fellow company secretary, lawyer, and an MBA. Having worked earlier with Deutsche, Postbank, and Edelweiss, Ajay has over 20 years of experience in banking and financial services industry, and is a hands-on practitioner and expert in the areas of compliance, governance, ESG, and internal controls. Welcome, Ajay, to the forum today. Welcoming the third panelist, Mr. Samit Gambhir. Samit is a company secretary and a corporate legal professional with around 30 years of experience, and is presently the Vice President Corporate Law and Company Secretary of DCM Shriram Limited. Samit is an expert in corporate governance, compliances, and board matters, and is a member of National Committee on Regulatory Affairs of CII, a member of Corporate Affairs Committee of PhD Chambers, and is a regular speaker on various seminars, conferences, and webinars. So welcome, Samit, to the panel discussion today.
Thanks so much.
Our fourth panelist, Mr. Shujat bin Ali. Shujat is the General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer of Ramki Enviro Engineers, which is India's largest waste management company with around 80 plants. He has over 2 decades of experience in the industry and is a regular speaker in several forums on governance, compliance, and ESG. Welcome, Shujat, to the panel.
Thank you, Sumit.
So we have a very good, as you can see from the profile of the speakers, very good panel today. People who are practitioners, people who are hands-on involved in ESGs, author like Dr. Ravichandran on the ESG. So experts on the topic today, and thank you panelists for accepting this invitation. So my first question is to Ajay, and again I'll on the similar theme, the other panelists are also welcome to contribute. So to start with the concept, what is ESG? So that we have people from all backgrounds. So what is ESG? Why it is important? What are the benefits of ESG? And why are we discussing ESG now? So as I said, SDGs are there, even the kids are being taught. Environment, social, and governance, these are not new concepts. So what is suddenly the trigger? Why has ESG suddenly become important? If you could just introduce the topic one by one. So starting with Ajay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for playing this video because SDG and given by the UN, they've called this decade as a decade of action. So a very appropriate time to have this discussion around the ESG topic. So as we know that ESG stands for environmental, social and governance risk, which normally nowadays investors have started realizing and analyzing the companies for before taking any investment decision. And it has gained momentum in recent past because maybe the momentum is now, but the fundamentals are not behind this concept are not new, right? So we can remember studying in our college time or the CS time or the legal law time. We used to study the people, planet, and profit, right? So these are the same terms which have been gaining momentum now, because now is the time that globally people have started realizing this, following this concept, right? And also, not only the investors, other stakeholders also have taken cognizance of it. For example, a lot of activities like activists, customer, consumer, your media, and other activists also, taking cognizance of it. And I'll just start with an example of giving behind this topic. I mean, so that we can understand the importance of it. Uh, so every year, Harvard Business Review publish a magazine, right? So they choose best performing CEO of the year, right? So they will be finding basis their parameters. They'll be identifying top 100 CEOs and then publish the name of them in their magazine. Uh, since 2014 or 15, I think they were doing it, and then Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos was coming as a top CEO since 2014-15, right? But in 2019, they tweaked the formula behind it and incorporated ESG practices and ESG parameters in their analyzing the best performing CEOs. So surprisingly, just because taking those formula and incorporating those ESG practices in their parameters, Jeff Bezos was out of top 100. I mean, because Amazon was very weak performing on the ESG parameters. So that's how I can see that not only the investors, but other stakeholders, for example, here, HBR being a business school and leadership school, also, following the ESG parameters of the lot of companies. And under each of the parameters, for example, let's say E, so environment is the key here, right? So behind the environment, they track how the companies are performing in the as a response to the climate change, managing their waste and pollution, carbon emission, and in social factor, they are looking after the human capital, occupational health and safety, diversity and inclusion, CSR, and other practices. And corporate governance has, we know that the transparency and how the boards and companies are functioning. So these are the basic fundamental behind it. And I'll also, give you one more example, which we can take right now is, for example, a lot of companies which are there, earning profit, and earning profit is not an issue, but then what are the activity and how they are performing and how they are behaving towards the environment and social and governance issue, that is also important. For example, take an example of oil companies, oil refineries, right? They have been transporting their oil through sea roads. But in case of oil spill in the sea and the damages to the environment, how do you calculate those damages, right? First of all, it is very difficult. And then if you add those damages, even if you have to calculate to their balance sheet, it might be that they turn out to be loss-making company, right? So these are the relevant examples, and these are how this is how the world is following the ESG, the practices and the ESG issues within the corporate. And also, this is about the because in India also it is gaining concept, because recently SEBI has mandated a disclosure norm through BSR/SR for top at least 1,000 companies. For others, it might be the voluntary as of now, but for top 1,000 listed company, it is going to be mandatory from 22-23, right? So this is a very, very relevant topic that we are discussing today, and we look forward that we are happy to contribute to the society and at least take this discussion forward. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Ajay, for your valuable opening remarks. So, moving on to Shujat. Shujat, your thoughts on suddenly, you're representing one of the largest waste management companies in India, and I'm sure this is all about environment. So, what is your take on ESG, the benefits, the suddenly what is it triggered today? You've been doing it for many years as a company. So what suddenly has triggered ESG?
Yeah, thanks, Sumit. So as Ajay rightly mentioned, see, I think we've been talking about sustainability, triple bottom line, planet, profit, all of that stuff. I think since last couple of years, I think there has been an increased awareness or more of an activism. In fact, I would say some of the pandemics and enhanced the conversation on climate change at a global level has really sensitized all the stakeholders. I think the gone are the days where only the financial performance was the only parameter for any investor or any the bank to assess the company, right? Similarly, I think even from a customer standpoint, from a society standpoint, I think all these other parameters have being analyzed now. So I was just thinking, largely because of the discussion around the net zero emissions, circular economy, we have seen some of the global companies, giving some specific pledges with respect to carbon neutrality and all of that stuff. I think so. While S and G, was definitely there, I think we have seen more of a conversation around environment, and of course, all these three things came together. So I think these are some of the triggers. But at the same time, I think one of the important aspects what I would like to highlight is the awareness of social media and the millennial generation. I think probably 5 years back we would have not seen a company's stock price or company's market get impacted by the social media or by the the millennial generation. Today, if the CEO makes any particular comment or views having a views about any of the business practices, I think it has a larger impact. Whether it's with respect to the society or whether it's with respect to any of the business practices or any of that stuff. So I think even the millennials or the consumers now want a sustainable products and sustainable services, right? So I think that has really also played a key role. So broadly, I would say it's stakeholder driven. Investors want to invest in a sustainable investing, right? Banks want to put their money in a businesses wherein it's environmentally conscious and sustainable. Same thing with the consumers as well. They want to be associated with the products and services which are more socially conscious and environmentally conscious, right? Same thing with employers as well. I mean, even attracting talent. I mean, people want to work with the companies who are driven by a purpose or at the same time working for a sustainable the businesses. I think these are all various factors which are driving the enhanced conversation of ESG. Apart from, of course, the enhanced regulatory framework wherein the government is pushing. Of course, that start I'm sure we'll discuss moving forward. I think these are some of the quick opening remarks. I look forward to share more thoughts.
Perfect. Thanks, Shuzal. So you're saying it's primarily investor driven, other than the regulatory interventions or reporting, etc. It's primarily investor driven, where companies get better terms and better they are perceived better by investors.
I would say stakeholders driven, not only the investors. All stakeholders.
And you're absolutely right. Yesterday, my daughter gifted me a Cadbury's, and I just turned around and since ESG was on the mind, I looked at the Cadbury's wrapper also said this the farmers have been paid their dues for this. So that's a social thing. And in another Cadbury's chocolate, another concept was that the farmers, the environment has been taken care of while taking things like that. So I mean, things are getting that prominence, and if we notice in our daily life, ESG is becoming more and more visible, and companies are taking it even voluntarily, even though it is not yet mandatory in India. Now, coming to Dr. Ravichandran. Dr. Ravichandran, you've authored books on ESG, CSR. So, what's your take on the whole subject, ESG?
Good morning, everyone. See, the topic from my perspective is always, at the bottom of the pyramid. We are talking about ESG and we are breathing in and breathing out about ESG because we are concerned about our humanity and the environment as a whole. See, the people at the bottom of the pyramid are the people who may be underprivileged, both economically and in terms of social and other parameters or denominators. What happens in ESG is that the consciously awareness is created, and it is not about talking about energy consumption, energy management, energy reduction, energy waste avoidance and all. And it is not about water management, water reduction or waste management and all. It is about how do these actions of profit making large corporates and industrial defense, other sources of fossil energy consumers, fossil energy producers, carbon creators, all these, how do they transform and translate into the effect or impact on the people on the ground? There the millions of people are there. There the entire population lives. Therefore, we look at from that perspective from the bottom of the pyramid. Similarly, on the social and governance angle, we look at those people who are underprivileged, and they are majority in number. The producers are very less, profit makers are very less, impact is on the entire humanity. So therefore, we look at from that whether we have proper human resources policies, whether we have avoided discriminatory policies, slaveries, and so many things. Similarly, in impact of climate change. Similarly, in terms of consumers getting proper products, I will, during the course of the presentation later on, I will dwell at length on certain practices of, companies which have been brought to light because of the entire activism that is prevailing. Therefore, I want everyone to look at ESG from the common man's perspective, from the people at the bottom of the pyramid, which is crowded and they are going to be affected. That's it.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Ravichandran, for the good remark. Coming to Samit. Samit, would you like to share some practices at your company, at the DC Shriram Group? How does your group look at ESG in practice as an overall thing?
Sure. So I think thanks you, very well said by the panelists. I think they have covered almost what ESG is, and we are talking about ESG today. And this has actually become a very important thing. But let me just tell you, this concept is always was there in India, I would say, because whenever you go, you go back and you read our Purans or Vedas and all. So we have always seen that, there was always a lesson that how the king should rule its kingdom. So governance, environment, social, everything was always there in India. Though, so this has come into light now in a different way, because it's basically investor driven now, basically for the organization, for the corporates. And I think it's and G part, we have been doing almost for 2 decades now that we have been focusing on G part actually, and a little less on the E and the S part. But now since last 2-3 years or 5 years, we have been seeing a lot of emphasis on the ESG as a concept. And that's a wonderful concept, I would say, because, the important is not that what do you do? The important is how do you do business? It's not important that how much money you earn or how much, growth you have done. The point is that, how much you are actually spending and how are you spending. So for example, I'll give you, some of the example of our organization, since you specifically asked for our organization. So we have been very, very, very active now in ESG front, frankly. And we came out this year with a, sustainability report, also very big, very thick sustainability report, which was actually assured by a Big Four also. So some of the efforts like we are doing it, one of the very important fact in our organization, we are a conglomerate, and it's we have around 10 businesses in our organization. So some of the businesses are so water intense. For example, in chemicals and all, there's a lot of water usage and all, power usage and all. So still, as an effort, what we have done is this time we have, we have declared that we are 10 times water positive, number one. Instead of using the water, we are on the contrary water positive, and that to 10 times. That's how we are doing a lot of harvesting of water in our sugar mills and all. And then we are using almost 40 to 45% of our energy through biomass. This is what our sustainability report, if you see it, it talks about that. Then, around 1 lakh hours of manned trainings, and then, all kind of a zero fatality for the year, so many plants, and then zero fatalities, safety protocols. And then, so, and then we have also created a biodiversity park in our Kota complex, which was assessed by CII recently, and CII actually appreciated that. And we have found, hundreds of new species of birds there actually, which were never seen in and around India. So all these things I'm saying is that, doing for environment, doing for social things. For example, are you taking care of the people who resides near your plants, or their health facilities, or their social things? So all these things, so we actually very aggressive in all these. And plus G is, thanks to the SEBI actually for a listed entities, I would say G is already in, in so much in our system that, we really have to do a lot of compliances. But I would still say one thing, that ESG as a concept is basically a culture, a DNA of an organization. I would say it comes from within. Even if so many things for compliance you really see, but still, unless and until there is a culture of the organization, there is a DNA of the organization, the tone of the top, you're not going to achieve in this. So I think these are my opening remarks.
Sure, thanks, Amit. They are quite valuable, the examples that you shared, and very rightly said, it's irrespective of the compliance. It's not just a tick in the box. It has to come
Absolutely.
it has to come from the heart of the organization. And
Absolutely.
these things will work. Ajay, you're doing a lot of work on ESG in your company. Now, we've discussed the concept, what is ESG, the meaning, the benefits, and the trigger or what is driving the ESG. But let's get into the practical aspects now. Would you like to share with the audience what exactly are you doing in ESG as a Vice President ESG in your own organization, which is an NBFC? So what does an NBFC have to do with an environment, first of all? And if you could share the practical tips or exactly examples so that we can get into details, and especially focusing on the environment. So let's dissect ESG into E, S, and G, and focusing on the environment, what an NBFC or a financial institution can do for the environment.
Yeah. So basically, I got introduced to the subject, I think 3 years back. So through one of the investor meeting that they started asking, okay, what are you doing on the ESG? So the same question we asked them. So S and G we can understand, but what about the environment? How would we do? We can intervene on the environment side of it. So being an NBFC or rather within the NBFC sector, we are a housing finance company. So we are providing loans to the customers for buying houses, right? So then they told us that look at your value chain, the complete value chain, the supply chain, right? If you within the supply chain also, if you can intervene somewhere, that would be great help, great support from the environment side. Then what we did is that we went ahead and then started analyzing their portfolio, right? In our portfolio, we also lend to a lot of affordable housing developers, right? And these are the very, very small developers, not very big name, but then small developers doing small project at a time and spread over all over country. So, and then second aspect which we analyze is that the 40% of carbon emission is done by the building, right? That was a very startling fact to us. Then we said, okay, now we have a problem statement. What do we do about it? And then we started discussing with them, and we started discussing with the expert, the architects who work under this subject. We got to know that these buildings can be made in a way that it can be sustainable also and can be certified from the green rating agencies which are there in India and abroad, right? So then we sat down with the developers and then started counseling them through through rating agencies, through our own architect. We started hiring green architect in our company. We built a small team there, and then we created a platform which is called Kutum. We started training them day-long program, and then on the one side we used to be there. There used to be sustainable architect. There used to be rating agencies, and then we started telling them it is even if you are making affordable homes, this still can be made green, right, without increasing the cost if you intervene at the right stage. And then we created another team in our company which is called Green Value Partner, right? And then we through this Green Value Partner we started giving them handholding and the tips and the ideas about how do we intervene, where to intervene, what kind of material to be used, how do we skill their employees who are building in the construction sector. So this whole gamut of thing we started doing it, and we saw the result, and we saw a lot of developers who are small time developers they started coming to us. They started, committing and pledging to us that they'll be building green. And as of now, we are actually helping 60 to 70 projects through that team, and that has happened in 1 year time, right? So that we got remarkable result. And idea is that because there are two aspects of it. One was while you are making the building, how can you make it sustainable, and ultimately it will pay back to the occupants eventually, right? So these were the two things. And then now we are also started educating the customer who is going to ask and who is going to live in those buildings, right? So now we are creating a differentiation in the mind of customer also. They should start asking for the green building, green units, green housing, right? So this is how we have identified as a housing finance. So so idea is that whatever activity you are doing, if you are dealing with human, and the moment you are dealing with human, you are actually there. You are dealing with the people who are actually doing carbon emission, right? So in your area, you can just identify those material risks and then start intervening there. So this is how we did it.
Amazing, amazing. So, a very good example, Ajay. Even despite being a lender, but you're adding, you're ensuring the green, environment and the sustainability through your extended value chain, through the people whom you're lending to, etc., etc. Very nice concept. Shujit, you are into the operations or the business of waste management. So, what is your best practice from the environment standpoint?
Yeah, thanks, Sumit. So I will specifically focus on the the environment aspects and how the aspect of the ESG with respect to the reporting in the various organizations. So as you are aware, I think we just talked about at the initial level the impact of the climate change, climate change, and the carbon emissions and so on and so forth. So how organizations can be profitable and run their operations while being environmental conscious, preserving natural resources and causing less pollution to the environment. I think that's a fundamental aspect. Now, if you see, I think the various parameters of e-reportings, go into specifically how is the organization using sustainable raw materials, or how exactly the company is working with respect to the various manufacturing process, so that the consumption of water or energy is much minimal or optimal, and how about using the renewable and clean energy or the EVs. So these are the various parameters, and how the emissions with respect to the the air and water, and what are the practices being followed by the company, so that it is impacting less to the environment, and not causing harm to the society. Again, we're all talking about the concept of a social license. I mean, the organizations might be compliant, organizations might be doing all the things from a profitable standpoint and all, but at the same time, all the organizations are in the society, and if anything impacts the society, I think that's a huge impact. So all the points which I've mentioned, I think the companies have to focus on these aspects, and follow the environmental laws as well. Again, while law compliance is there, I think there has to be a step ahead. Most of the organizations do produce, whether it is hazardous waste or solid waste, or consume various paper, plastic, electronic. What are the organizations doing? I think I mean, possibly these are at the lower end of the value chain, and maybe that much of focus is not being done. So I think it is pretty important in the context of the ESG, in the context of sustainability, to weigh down all these practices as to how the company is focusing on recycling, whether how it is focusing on various waste, paper or plastic or electronic waste, or for the hospitals in all these biomedical waste, and large sector industrial sectors, how are they managing their hazardous waste. It has to be in a scientific disposal manner. So I think we work with all the companies across to help them be compliant, not only by law in terms of letter and spirit, but at the same time their operations should not impact the society and the environment. And all these practices, well documented, data driven, will form part of the ESG report, which will give the confidence to the investors and stakeholders, employees, and community as to what are the various practices with respect to the environment being contributed by this company. And of course, every company can have a target as to, okay, their fuel consumption will be reduced by so much, or their emissions would be reduced by so much. And I think if we have a clear-cut plan on each of the organizations, like, of course, every organization is different. Their exposures towards these points, whatever mentioned, may not be the same. A textile company may have a full focus on these things vis-a-vis an electronics or a software company. So every company has to look into all these aspects and have a clear-cut plan and work towards the metrics so that they improve upon these aspects, not only with respect to following the law, but at the same time, contributing to the larger, the climate change and overall, carbon neutrality.
Very nice, very nice. And Sujat, when you were discussing offline, I was really amazed by the fact that when you shared that even power can be generated, through the waste that you recycle. So that is so nice to hear, and this itself is also very nice end use of the waste.
In fact, we use the word waste management, but I think over a period of time, we're all talking about recycle, reduce, reuse, and I think it's all about resource management, than waste management.
Sure, sure. So, Dr. Ravichandran, we have covered the E part with Ajay and Sujat. Would you like to talk about the S part or the social part? Specifically, when you share, I keep getting confused between the social part of ESG and the CSR. So corporate social responsibility and the S part, as far as corporates are concerned, are these the same things? Are these different? Would you like to talk about the S part of ESG and also differentiate between the CSR and ESG like that?
See, basically, there is a close interconnect between the ESG goals and the CSR objectives. I have always felt that the true CSR lies in ESG because it is a comprehensive coverage of environmental, social governance, and governance being the top of everything, whether it is corporate or non-corporate, government or non-government. For example, when you look at the Indonesian model, the extent of exploitation of natural resources form a metric for imposing on the companies statutory or regulatory obligations to work towards corporate social responsibility. In social governance, which is forming part of the ESG, I would like to just talk about two illustrations which most of us probably are familiar. When you look at the disclosure made by Johnson & Johnson on the 1st June 2020, 2021, I was stunned to know that the company had reported their readiness with $2.5 billion to pay the plaintiffs in the suit against them. Originally at the First Circuit Court, the compensation awarded was $4.7 million, so $4.7 billion. For the purpose of understanding, we know 7,500 crore, $1 billion approximately. $2.5 billion is available ready on the day when the Supreme Court verdict comes. Company was originally ordered 4.7, reduced at the appellate round to 2.1. 2.1 with interest is 2.5. $2.5 billion. Supreme Court rejects their appeal. On the same day, the company reports to Securities Exchange Commission, here is the money. And what is the issue? The issue is that the talc which they have used has asbestos, and there are two methods. One method is called the pre-concentration method. Pre-concentration method separates talc products from asbestos particles so that imaging equipment can accurately display the amount of asbestos present in the talc sample. But what the company does is they use the talc which is hidden behind, because in the front you can't see it, therefore it is similar to a cheat device. Where is the governance here? And talc is considered to be causing ovarian cancer for mothers, and mothers suffer for years and decades having used it. Therefore, this is exactly what I want to say about corporate social responsibility. Where is CSR? Where is governance? If years and years you have been raking the moolah, and today when $2.5 billion is required to be paid, you are saying, yes, it is ready, which means that is the stinking power of wealth of money. Therefore, please understand the impact of it. Come to Volkswagen National Green Tribunal has ordered 500 crores. Now, what is the problem there? They have deployed a cheat device so that emissions that are recorded by the software is reduced and it shows as if it is within the norms. Across the world, several jurisdictions, they have suffered adverse orders. Where is the governance here? What about the society? Are we not supposed to take care of the consumers? Are we not supposed to leave a good world for the posterity? CSC found potassium bromate in bread, which is commonly consumed by everybody. Therefore, corporate social responsibility is a conscious effort taken by, in our country, Government of India, for the purpose of reaching out to the masses and ensuring that there is governance, there is benefit, there is health, there is education, because health and education and food security will lead to awareness, will awaken the society. Society will be able to question it, and when society questions, everything will change. Is a fundamental factor. That's all.
Samit, if you could briefly touch upon, although G is the most, I would say, the oldest and the most commonly understood part, the governance aspect. So would you quickly sum up the G part of the ESG?
Sure, Sumit, thanks. So I think, as I already told you, G, the overall governance has to be in the DNA of the organization, if I'm talking from the corporate perspective. So there is nothing in the world which can actually teach you governance by ticking the box, as you really said, but the guidelines are always beneficial. For example, SEBI has already given so much for a listed entity to comply with that, you know that what all is required for you. Governance is nothing but actually the good practices, the good processes you have in the organization, right? Now, in the good practices, one is, are you actually doing it, just for the sake of doing it, or you are actually doing in the spirit also? So the important thing is, I can understand that for the listed entities, most of the listed entities are actually compliant because SEBI has actually given so much to comply with the governance related issue. For example, recently the related party transactions, and then, committees, risk management committees, internal controls, each and everything is there. But for unlisted companies, there's a lot of scope to improve in terms of governance. So I always believe governance comes from the top. It is the responsibility of the board of directors to set the tone for the governance. Unless and until you have a good mix of board of directors, good mix of committees, people are even thinking in some countries, I'm saying that people are even thinking that, the board mix, not only of the board mix in terms of different skills, knowledges, but from the different, race, and also from the different, the gender diversity, for example. SEBI has actually made it mandatory for listed entities, but gender diversity is actually very, very important because women brings a different perspective. So all kind of processes, practices, policies, what do you have in your organization is talking about your G governance, this thing, and how much transparent you are. Maybe, are you transparent with your vendors? Are you transparent with your customers? Are you transparent with your employees? Do you only have the policy but you don't interact with your employees? Do you interact with your vendors regular basis? Do you take care of, in terms of your anti-bribery policies, in terms of your ethical policies? And it's just only for the sake of policy, or you are actually taking care of that? For example, in our, I really see HR, in our HR function also, we see during this COVID period, I mean, they were actually working tirelessly 24/7, and they have set up a hotline that each and every employee, and our HR team, not only the HR team, but entire task force was created for the employees. And during the COVID period, every day, they were taking care of each and every employees. They were calling them, they were taking care of their families. Is there anything that they need? Is there any hospitalization they need? Any cylinder oxygen they need? So, I mean, basically implementation of these processes and policies is actually, what really matters.
So would you, in the same breath, cover the reporting aspect? So recently, last year, May 2021, SEBI came out with a circular where the report was changed to BRSR. So would you talk about that and the integrated reporting that's being talked about as far as the ESG reporting is concerned for listed companies?
So I think, the journey in India started with 2009, I think, when MCS started with national voluntary guidelines. These were the 9 principles they came. And then thereafter they started. And then, SEBI also came out with integrated reporting that, you voluntary can go for integrated reporting. So integrated reporting is basically a combination of all kind of reporting, wherein not only on the financial, as we all panelists are talking, not only on the financial, but you have to really focus on your other aspects, that, what kind of are your responsibilities, how responsible a corporate citizen you are, what are your important areas, what is your approach towards different issues and all. So it's basically, there are 6-7 things in integrated. It is international integrated reported council, which is basically a council of regulators, different word-wise regulators, investors, trustees, NGOs. A lot of people have actually formed this integrated reporting council, and then they have come out with a framework for that. And that generally talks about, it talks about 6 principles mainly, though NVG and all talks about 9 principles. It talks about, basically, it says that you have to not only give the financial aspect, but what is your, intellectual aspect, what is your human related aspects, what are your social related aspects, what are your other natural related aspects. So all these things should be reported combinedly, not only the financial, but non-financial parameters, which are really, really important for an investor to know while they're investing. However, one thing which is, still not very clear, and particularly in India, people sometimes get confused also with these all reporting, because there's so many standards and so many things are thrown upon investor at times that, a little medium-sized investor or not a very big investor is not able to understand so many things sometimes. So I think the time will come where people start understanding all these things, because the first and foremost thing is that we are making it kind of a single type of reporting. Now there are a couple of other types of reporting also, but integrated reporting, if adopted by all the industries, like IFRS for accounting thing, integrated reporting types, if adopted by the industry, adopted by the companies and all, it will definitely will give an idea that how to read this report. So that is one. The other is BRSR, which SEBI has made mandatory from the next year onwards. So BRSR is again on the same concept of ESG and integrated reporting se lekar ke, and it talks about all the 9 capitals of yours. So we had BRR initially. So BRR ke andar hum log 9 capitals mein we used to give all these things. But one important thing which they have added now, BRSR, is the leadership. So what they call is the disclosure which are voluntary actually. And that's very important thing actually, because what we are thinking is that we only talk about the savings, what we have done, the carbon saving, what we have done, the social, what we have done, the environmental, what we have done. But what about the other value chain? What about the, so you can always disclose your leadership related disclosure, which means your value chain related. For example, I'll just give you an example. You say that you are saving fuel by not going through the airplane and you are doing the conferences through VC. That means you are saving on the carbon, you are saving on the fuel. But what happens when a supplier comes to you for a meeting? Do you really encourage him, okay, don't come to the meeting and we'll do a VC? So that means you have also, encourage your supplier to save on the fuel. So that's an important thing, wherein your extended partners are also doing something on your encouragement. So that is a voluntary disclosure which you can also make. And I think that's very, very important, because, this is a kind of a chain. You encourage others, others will encourage you. So that means, you not only you saving for your own organization from your perspective, but you are also encouraging others, your suppliers, your vendors, your employees, your customers, that, and how much you are saving on our encouragement, and we can also report that also. So,
Sure.
So that's the BRSR concept.
So from business responsibility reporting, BRR, to now business responsibility and sustainability report, BR.
Absolutely.
So right now, I think this is voluntary for the listed companies now, and next year it will be mandatory for the top 1,000 market cap listed companies to report in BRSR format.
That's right.
And I think that will lead the way, because first the top 1,000 listed companies will start reporting on BRSR, and then will come the other private companies and other large companies and so many other companies, again on a voluntary basis, not because it is tick in the box or a compliance, but if it starts becoming a culture and becoming a DNA.
Yeah, so just to add, I think, apart from the listed company environment, we see a lot of companies voluntarily also adopting and started reporting these things. And of course, BRSR is only from a listed standpoint, but, there are a lot of global frameworks, whether it is GRI, IARC, SASB. I mean, one can do a research, you will find not less than 6-7 frameworks. And of course, it's for each of the company who are doing in a voluntary mode, they can choose any of these frameworks which really suits their needs as well. So I think there are a lot of frameworks which are available, and companies can choose the reporting mechanisms or the frameworks which is best suited.
So when you are saying global frameworks available, one, if you could mention categorically for the audience, which are those global frameworks? The second question is
GRA is one framework. IIRC Integrated Report Council, there is one framework. SASB Sustainability Account Standard Board. Then you have CDSB. Then you have UN Global Compact. Then International Organization Security Commission, and again TCFD. I think there are these various frameworks which are available, but largely, you see IIRC and SASB is something followed by most of the organizations as well. So
Sujat, sorry, no, please continue. I thought.
Yeah, I just said that.
Sujat, I just had one point of view here is that this is what I really feel a little uncomfortable, because there's so many framework available as on today. So people are really confused. Some companies are adopting some frameworks, some countries are adopting some frameworks. So I think we really have to. I don't know which one is better, which one is not better, which one has a different criteria. So I think that's where sometimes
you're absolutely right. I was
if
reading
I
an
may
article the
comment
other
here.
day. The same point was mentioned, and I think the aspiration was maybe there should be a global one standard or something which is universally acceptable as well. But yeah.
So if I may share my experience, because last year we went ahead, and though we were not listed company, and then BRSR is also not, as of now, was not applicable. So we went ahead and published our first sustainability report, and primarily we adopted GRI. Right? But then we thought that some of the aspect of SASB and the TCFD were also applicable. So we made a mix of it. So GRI being the primary, the focus point of it, and then we put some other parameters also, and we incorporated in the report, and then mentioned that this standard is based on the SASB, this is based on the TCFD, and these are primarily the GRI report. So I think as of now, investors, the reportee or the companies can choose between all of them, and I think GRI being a very generic one can be made applicable to most of them. But other than GRI, I think TCFD or the SASB or I think the IR reporting also, they can choose. They can do a mix of it. So that's what we do.
Where do we report? The standards exist, global standards exist, but you make a report, but where do you submit these if they are not regulatory? So how do you publish?
There are disclosures in your annual report, or it could be a separate sustainability report. Different organizations use a different approach. For example, some companies create a completely different report and publish in their website. Of course, some of them integrate this into their annual report as well. So these are the various disclosures and reportings, and of course they will share with the stakeholders, banks, and so on. And so on.
Ajay, there was a earlier talk that investors are also quite a driving force as far as ESG is concerned, and I know you were talking about some green bond, etc. So would you very quickly, talk about in the next 2-3 minutes about the green bond, the investment climate, the rating, etc. Just an overview on these 2-3 aspects: investments, ratings, green bond, etc. on ESG. What exactly are these?
So before on this topic, I just want to give a preface. If you can permit me 1 minute.
Yeah, sure.
See, the OECD report has given what investors look at. They have given the parameters like climate change. In that, of course, the carbon emissions, climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, environmental energy, pollution. What are the air polluting spills, waste, etc. Water, energy, biodiversity, animal welfare, privacy, data security aspects, community involvement. How do you involve the community in all your efforts? Human capital, governance, market behavior, involvement in controversial situations, and human rights at workplace. These are all the broad parameters laid down by OECD as the parameters investors look. And it becomes very easy to look at from these parameters, all these things.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Ravichandran. Yes, Ajay.
So I was saying that I think question was regarding the green bond. I mean, how the environment is shaping up, right? So the globally investors are actually by their investment mandate, they have so they will be kind of reporting to their investors that wherever their money is going and they're lending to the people, how are those money creating a positive impact on the environment or the social side of it. So there are 2-3 kinds of bond which are getting into practice. One is green bond, second would be the social bond, and third would be the sustainability bond itself, which can be a hybrid of green and social both, right? So essentially how does it work is that company like us or like any company which want to borrow money under green bond or social bond, they will prepare a framework, right? And then in that framework, they will put a commitment that then what would be they doing as a use of those proceeds which they will be receiving from the investors, and with use of those proceeds, what kind of impact will be created, right? And then there will be an independent reviewer who will come and check that actually those impact has come on board or not. And this is how you go ahead. And then investors are very keen nowadays, and one or two agencies which are very active in this is one is the climate bond initiatives. So they claim to mobilize already have mobilized $1 trillion of green bond, right? And their target is 100 trillion by 2030 or 2035, right? So they are on course of it. And then there are other principles which is called ICMA, International Capital Market Association principle, which are behind the social bond and green bond principles, right? So basis that framework can be prepared, and these agency can certify. You can get it reviewed from there is second party also. You can get reviewed it. Once they certify the framework, then obviously you can look out for the investors who are looking for these kind of green bond, and then you can go ahead with that. So with that also, that will be an additional responsibility of using those proceeds for the commitment that you are given, and also annually report all the impact that has been created through that green bond, right? So this is a very, very different detailed subject. We can have another session on it, but otherwise, in nutshell, I can tell you that this is going to be the key ask from all the investors going forward.
Sure. Thanks. One last question from my side to sum up the topic, starting with Dr. Ravichandran. Dr. Ravichandran, now the topic is how to implement an effective ESG framework in your company or in any company. And if you have to advise the audience, would you like to share some examples from the current the current companies, how they are implementing reporting, etc. And therefore, what's your recommendation in the next couple of minutes, if you could just share that.
See, basically, we are talking about a common framework which requires certain things to be disclosed. Basically, if you take the task force on climate-related financial disclosures, disclosure of governance structure in the organization on the climate-related matter is an important requirement. There must be a definition of responsibility owners, that is called the role of management. So far as climate-related risks are concerned, the company is supposed to sit and define what are the CRR aspects they have, what is the actual and potential impact thereon, how different climate-related scenarios will impact their efforts today, because we are talking about pumping in and sinking huge amount of capital in achieving the overcoming the climate-related risks and the ESG aspects. How do we identify, assess, manage the climate-related risks, and what is the process that we are applying to manage it? What are the metrics and targets? What is the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 energy, and what are the targets and plans? In my opinion, these sort of 10 items will have to be found in everybody's report, is my view. And the analysis of my own analysis of top 50 companies ESG reporting, some of the companies I have been able to get even 2021. And when you look at the companies are, I have, since I have also studied certain aspects in some other countries, I am happy to say that our country with the BRSR, even though it is in voluntary status, has progressed very well, and top companies have done extremely well. There is no doubt. Secondly, we need to be happy about India signing agreement with IRENA for the non-renewable, new and non-conventional energy. That is just about 10 days before 16 Jan. And we are also happy to know that 12% of Indian hydrogen energy is coming from hydrogen sources. COP21, if you remember, COP26 is over. We are talking about COP21. We said 2030 we will achieve 40% non-fossil, but November 2021 itself we have achieved something like 150 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel, which means we can definitely achieve 500 gigawatts as promised in COP26 in 2030 itself. So that is the push that is happening. So disclosures have in the reports have formed the basis for it. For example, if you take Tata Motors, they have disclosed clearly what is the energy consumption, what is the cubic meter of waters they are requiring, and how they are going to withdraw it, how much will be reduced, what is the target, and to very specifically say, they say that CHG emissions, they talk about in terms of number and value. So similarly, I went to Mahindra & Mahindra. I was happy to see this is the only Indian company amongst 106 global companies to get AA score in terms of climate and water stewardship, global environmental, non-profit and disclosures. They have defined what is the extent of renewable energy today they are having and what they are going to achieve, how much is the energy consumption. So I have studied top 50. It is available in my book on CSR and ESG. I am very happy to tell that compared to US, Australia and other countries, including UK, we are far ahead and we are progressive and we are definitely going to achieve all the sustainable development goals.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Ravi Chandan. So I think the key is taking it voluntarily, reporting it out as per the standards, and even as per the global standards voluntarily, so that this enters the public domain and it can be appreciated, it can be seen, it can be measured, etc. Shujit, last closing remarks on how to implement. If you can be focused on this question for the audience, how to implement an effective ESG strategy in any company, because we have some audience questions as well on we are an IT company or we are an academic, etc. So how to implement in all sorts of companies? Yes.
Sure. I'll quickly summarize in a couple of minutes. I think firstly, as Samit and others said, tone at the top, right? I mean, we're talking about this concept. So unless and until there is a buy-in from the leadership and real, belief from the heart and mind from the board, I think these things cannot be really worked out. So I think it has to be part of a board conversations to start with. Some of the boards can have a quarterly agenda, or even possibly can have a specific charter as well as to what are the issues the board wants to see about the ESG. That could be one. Some of the companies can even form a specific ESG committee as well, or they may think through should this be part of an agenda of audit committee or a risk committee, whatever it might be. That could be a thought process to have a strong push at a board level. Then coming to the the executive level, I think that's a key thing. I mean, we may not see a separate ESG function as such, because broadly to see all the topics, it's a combination of HR, legal, finance, supply chain, technology, and all of them. So I think maybe the key thing could be to form a cross-functional work group which will be focusing on these issues and start as is approach. Okay, where we are currently, do a diagnostic check as to what are the standards or what are the things applicable with respect to that business. Again, these things may not be the same for all the companies, right? Depending on that industry, they may evaluate where they are in each of these parameters. Then possibly do work with global benchmarkings as to what some of the other companies are doing. Then, of course, that will really help them to come up with some goals. Of course, you can start with a smaller level, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 kind of an approach, and have a smaller goals, and then implement those goals. That could be by virtue of putting a framework, changing the policy, strengthening some technology, or whatever it might be. And of course, ultimately, it has to be measured and reported back to the board. So I think it has to start with a slow approach. Of course, the maturity can enhance over a period of time. So I think whatever I just suggested, I think would be applicable for any of the organization, irrespective of whether it's IT or technology or industry or I think that's a brief approach which any company can start looking in with respect to implementing or having a conversation on the ESG frameworks.
Sure. Thanks, Shujat. That was quite eloquent. Ajay, would you like to supplement on exactly again the same question? How to implement an effective ESG strategy? Anything you would like to add on to Shujat?
Thanks, Sujat and Dr. Ravichandran has actually covered most of it. So my key is taking from the Sujat point of view that one has to be very careful because not everything will be applicable to all the companies, right? So you have to identify the material risk applicable to your company, right? So wherever you can make an impact. So in each of the parameters, whether it is environment, social, or governance, while some of it might be common, but actually you can identify and you start, creating an impact towards that. So, and the moment you have the leadership buy-in and tone at the top, like Samit and Sujat mentioned, it will actually go to that, to level that you start, integrating in your business strategy also eventually. So then you start focusing on it. So, and second part of it is that I think which we should be careful is that going forward, this will be audited, right? So better would be that in the process you start integrating the audit process also, because a report which is going out in the public domain, an assured report which is going out in the public domain will create a lot of difference, right? If you say that, if you can confidently say that this report has been, and the data which is given in there is that audited by maybe internal or external auditor, which is left to the company as of now, would be making a lot of difference. So in the process, we can build the audit process as also. And third is that do start reporting in the public domain, because a lot of these rating agencies, without knowing the companies, right? So they have started already rating those companies. So how this function is works that the rating agencies take the data, most of it from the public domain. So disclosure is must, and then if you disclose the assured report, it is even better.
Yeah, Sumit, I forgot to mention one point. I think with respect to the mindset, when we are implementing this, we want to only think about compliance mindset, or कि मुझे report करना है वो reporting mindset, or okay, I just need to mitigate some ESG risk, is that mindset, or the one which largely Ravichandran sir mentioned about the humanity mindset. I think that is also a thought process the company may take, which of these mindset they want to take.
Very true.
In fact, an interesting thing is I found in my study, I'll just read out one sentence only. SBI Life Insurance Company, as Ajay Jaiswal just mentioned, it may not apply to all the companies. So this company says, in view of nature of business, company says emissions, waste generation, clean technology, energy efficiency, renewable energy, clean development mechanism, they are all inapplicable to our company. And still we are ensuring wastewater recycling, plastic bottle recycling, reduction in food wastage, waste paper recycling, and all empty PET, that is PET bottles of 100 and 500 ml are collected, packed and sent to vendor for various plastic recycling initiatives. Food waste generated is collected and recycled. So SBI cards, for example, SBI card says the only thing we are able to do is less travel, meetings through virtual, as Samit was mentioning. So this is, in terms of their presence and their footprint, they have to look at it. But ESG is not only about energy, water, and waste. It is more. And that more aspects are one where these companies will be also able to contribute. That's
awesome. Very nicely said, Dr. Rajan. Yes, Samit, would you like to sum up on the ESG? What can professionals do to implement ESG in their companies?
Yeah, sure. I think from all the discussion of panelists, I have also realized that the impact assessment is very, very important. So you really have to see what impact are you making to the humanity, society, and all. So in our organization, how we started was gradually we started when this concept was actually popularized. And also what we did was, when ESG, everything was happening, so we came out with sustainability report first. And it was unassured initially, and then we realized that how much we are doing, what is the impact, and then we did the impact assessment, etc. Next year we came out with assured sustainability report, and then we ourselves realized, and our management was happy to see, board was happy to see that, for example, I told you that we are 10 times water positive. We have done so much of this in terms of social things and etc, etc. So now the instructions is that, see, we have 10 businesses, it's a conglomerate. So every business is like a small company for us, because it's an independent business head. So now the instruction from the management side is that we have a corporate management board which meets every month. So one is that, we sometimes we keep outside agency also to give us a presentation on ESG, what is happening and all. And we discuss invariably about the, our initiatives about ESG. We have a whole-time director who is dedicatedly with a team. One whole-time director is dedicatedly, on the ESG and other initiative, but responsibility lies on all the business heads. Now, whenever there is a, project, whenever there is a strategy meeting, or whenever there is a business review by the business people, quarterly there is a business review with the management. So in business review now, it's become a permanent agenda that how much you have done in terms of ESG in this quarter, what was the impact, and what are you thinking for the next quarter, for example. So this has actually become a very, very important and become a part of our DNA in terms of not only strategy meetings, but also of our business reviews, frankly. And this time we are thinking of, not this year, maybe next year, we are thinking of, getting to the integrated reporting model also. We are thinking on that line. So I think dedicated, by a whole-time director, run by a whole-time director who is compiling everything, responsibility fixed on all the business heads, so that from their own businesses. For example, sugar, as you said, every company has a different criteria. Sugar business has a different thing to do. Our chemical business has a different thing to do. But plastic business has a different thing to do. So everyone has been given their own bit, and then accordingly, it's compiled by a whole-time director. So I think we are improving a lot, I think, so that's what I would say.
Very, very nicely said. So I think to sum up, what it looks like is tone at the top is very, very important.
Absolutely.
The commitment of the director, the managing director, the board, the top management, tone at the top, and then it not being taken as a reporting or a tick in the box or a compliance, but it has to come as a DNA. I think that's the second theme that came. Third is not just tone at the top, because the people, there has to be institutions, there has to be organization, there has to be relevant, you make an ESG function or an ESG department, or you embed the ESG processes within each department, or somehow, have some ESG goals, some ESG metrics, some ESG reviews, to really embed ESG. And every industry can actually do, like Ajay explained, even in the NBFC, they found out a way through the extended value chain network, like the supplier network, etc., or to whom they are lending, etc. So it is not just companies who are into waste management, like Shuja's company. Every industry can look at how they can contribute to the environment, how they can contribute to the social cause and the governance aspect, and that's what ESG is all about. At Complinity, Complinity is India's leading compliance software, and I'm Sumit Pava. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Complinity. By the way, I'm also a company secretary and lawyer. I forgot to introduce myself in the beginning, so I'll do it in the end. I also have 20 years of experience, 10 years on the corporate side, 7, 8, 9 years on the practice side, and now leading Complinity. Complinity, if I say how we are contributing towards ESG, again, now having understood a lot about ESG from the experts, we are not a listed company. We are not doing BRSR, etc., etc. But the technology, digitizing things, automating things, removing paperwork. This itself is, I would say, one cause towards the environment. This webinar itself, where hundreds of participants, I think, have. I mean, webinar is not our innovation. Of course, COVID has taught everybody, how webinars operate. But what I'm saying is the compliance software or digitizing your compliance contract, litigation, audits. So many things which used to happen in the physical world, if they can be done in the online world, if they can be done on the cloud, I think it contributes a bit, we can do our bit to the environment. And I think also it enhances the governance standards of companies, because all the red, amber, greens, the dashboards, the reports, the statutory, regulatory tasks, escalations, reminders, all of those things also enhance the governance standards of companies. So, this is our small way to contribute to the governance and to the environment in the country. Webinar is not yet ended. I'll come to the audience question and try to see. Okay, and my request to the panelists is, whoever feels like answering any question, please just jump and volunteer to answer. So it's the fastest finger first. Whoever starts speaking gets this one. How ESG is important in supply chain management nowadays? Ajay, I think you already answered that, right? That the way you are taking care of your
yeah, that's correct. So we have covered it. So only thing is that each company will have to analyze their supply chain management and see who are the actors who are there, and how they can keeping the concept same, and how can they advise them to work on this aspect.
Yeah, and companies can have specific policies as to what they want to do from ESG. They want the vendors and the supply chain as well to follow the same practices. That is one aspect. And I think as social aspect, I think the policies with respect to the MSMEs and working with the diverse vendors also, that also have a role with respect to supply chain management and the ESG.
Sure. So okay, next is what is the difference between sustainable and ESG? Sustainability and ESG.
Yeah, I'll take sustainability is a pretty broader word. What organizations can do to impact the environment and the society and all. I think whereas ESG is very specific, you have metrics you can clearly report. What exactly is going on. So I think sustainability is a broader umbrella in my view.
Sure, and I think that's also a key difference between CSR and ESG. Right? CSR is
also. Yeah, also this is because of the people have been using a lot of confusing terms like sustainable investing, social responsible investing, green investing, impact investing. So actually all roads are leading to that only. So as long as you are clear about the concept, ESG or people, planet, profit, whatever you may call it, the agenda is same. Like Dr. Ravichandran said, that where are you creating the impact? That is more important rather than the fundamental of it.
Sure. Well, can ESG be linked to the carbon credits? I think, of course, yes.
Yes, of course.
I think Dr. Ravichandran also covered that very locally. Next is, can we have a recording? Of course, yes. Let me mention it for everybody. This session is being recorded, and the link will be put up on the YouTube, or you can even go to the YouTube and search for Complinity channel. Please subscribe to the channel so that the moment we put up the recording, you'll be notified as well. Yeah, how can a technology company can carry out what is that CAR or ESG?
I think how can an IT company implement an ESG? I think we covered here. Every company can implement it. I think we covered that point.
Yeah. And also, Complinity is an IT company, and again, everybody can do their own bit. We don't need to really move mountains. As long as we can do our small bit, I think we'll be doing our job. Okay, so Professor LJ Singh asks, the discussion is mostly focusing towards corporates. Professor LJ, apologies for that. We all hail from the corporate, so corporate is a lingo that comes in the mind, but I think the concepts were equally applicable. But okay, the question is, we are an academic institution, Central University. We have a Department of Environment, Science and Geology. There are projects being done by many faculty for environment. We are also using ERP system for our day-to-day activities. So I think it's a comment, not a question. But I think be it any organization, I mean, company we use as a lingo, we are all company secretaries as well. But this is applicable to any organization because it's anyways on a voluntary basis at the least.
Absolutely, I think it's applicable to all, and I think from academics, I think they can play a larger role in creating these awareness in the youth and also the current students as well. I think that's a great role what academics can play, since he mentioned the academics as well.
So the institutions and universities have already started programs on ESG, so like postgraduate diploma courses. Yeah, to that extent, it has already seeped in.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the next question is, a private company into IT sector wants to undertake ESG. I think that's what we answered, right? Or Shujat, would you like to again sum up in a line again on the IT?
No, I think irrespective of any industry, I think the same approach what I mentioned would be applicable. But of course, from a IT sector, I think specifically the electronic waste, or specifically the the supply chain or the people aspect would be applicable. I think the G part would be pretty much be the same. I think the yes and the E part may be different depending on the each operations, but I think the same concept whatever we discussed applies to all the industries. The gravity may be little because IT companies may not be polluting so much, but of course the electronic waste aspect, the policies, the data protection, and all those things will have a good relevance for the IT company.
Sure. Professor LG again asked, do we undertake auditing in ESG or something like? Are there any ESG audits kind of things available? Who does these audits, etc.?
So these are not statutory audit as of now, but yes, assurances are being done by the firms, and this is a good to know because they are doing assurances. Number one, on the basis of that, yes, realistic things in that. Number two, on the basis of impact. Number three, on the basis of yes, the information you said is correct actually, so that the people understand that you're making a correct statement. So I think there's no statutory requirement for that, but you can always do the assurances done by the chartered.
Yeah, I think Sumit, this is a futuristic thing. Maybe after 10 years, government may come up with amending some audit standards and all, and they may ask the statutory auditor to even to report on ESG aspects also, but it is futuristic in my view. But I think at this point,
for example, if you see in listed entities, corporate governance is already to be certified by chartered accountant or company secretary. So these are governances already been certified by the listed entity.
What generally we are looking is that like external rating and internal rating. Right. Verifiable agencies who are in the respective fields, have they studied and assessed, and therefore the report is based on verifiable sources.
Right.
That way validation is taking place now. In audits, this is exactly what we look at. What is the representation made in terms of maybe, for example, water, waste, energy and all. And what is the basis for that? What are the sources for that? How does it get aggregated and presented? How much of it is verifiable and verified by an external agency?
Yeah, I think audit, I think assessments can be done because there might be expertise needed, and I think in the market you will have various expertise who can actually come and assess that. Otherwise, the measurement may be an issue. But yeah.
Sure. And in fact, I can give you, in our sustainability when we're doing the assurance, it was such a long process because the people from a big four, they interviewed each and every business head, people down the line. They interviewed our vendors. They also had a discussion session with our customers, a session with employees. So I mean, it's a complete good process to assure that.
Mr. Sanjay Rikki asked, can we be aware of the standards on ESG and their measurement? So I think Sujit, you covered
that.
Yeah.
BRSR reporting for listed companies.
Yeah. Only one aspect I think is also there in the question was the ratings. Apart from the standards, I think there are various ratings in terms of Dow Jones and MCDJ, and there are several rating frameworks. Or S&P is of course there. So some of the organizations who are wanting to have a specific rating in these, I think they can even be part of those assessments as well. That is the next level after reporting. They want to be rated as top 10, 15 in those indexes as well.
Next is there any particular board specifically found for ESG? So I think we covered that it could be committee of the board of directors, it could be a special group committee within the companies, any sort of governance. You could call it a steering committee, ESG committee, whatever else. So any governance could be followed on that. Krishna Prajapati, it was great listening experts. It would be insightful. Is there any ESG reporting standard? I think we covered the ESG reporting standards in India, which is a BRSR report for the time being for listed companies. And can small businesses monitor their ESG? If yes, how can I do that? So monitoring ESG for small businesses. Anybody would like to briefly pick up?
Yeah, I think that's a voluntary thought. I mean, it's a great question, get thought process that even if it's small business, they want to integrate all these practices. Nothing stops. So it's just the interest in these points which is needed by the business and slowly start working towards it.
Correct. Scale of the company will not. Yeah, scale of the company will not matter here as long as the fundamental remains the same. It can be applicable to any company.
Sure. So, what are opportunities for CS in the ESG field? Dr. Ravichandran, would you like to answer that?
Certainly, because you will be seeing that there is a scope 3 aspect of the whole thing, where scope 3 is outside the organization, and somebody has even asked about supply chain management. So therefore, ultimately, in every organization where input or output, distribution or supply, vendor or purchaser, consumer, there is a role for ESG aspects. And sometimes, whether it is labor issues, human resources issues, or managing the resources issues, A lot of things are done even in MSME, because they are ultimately supplying to the top companies. That is why SEBI has probably thought of top companies to enforce it. Through scope 3, it goes to and touches everybody's lives.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Vijay asked, what are the sustainability index computation parameters? Anybody?
So parameters are going to be same which you identify as sustainability key risk for your organizations. I think they are going to rate on you on the actions that you have taken on those risks that you identified. I think the company has to, because there is no standard on those parts. There are standards that how do you report it, how do you implement it, how do you get it assured and the rating thing. But then ultimately it comes to that point that you will have to, being a corporate or any other entity, you will have to identify the risk around the ESG and start acting on each of the aspect, and then making a part of a strategy and reporting it, and maybe implementing and measuring through KPIs and everything. So those are the point which is going to be there for the rating agency to look for.
Sure. Nilesh Mehta asks, are there any safeguards in place in compliance to ensure that entities reporting on what they have been doing and getting away by not disclosing or reporting damage to the society or through hazardous product, material, etc. So companies doing damage and getting away by not reporting. So what are the safeguards in compliance? Interesting question.
No, I think firstly, there are, with respect to the laws, I think, whatever points you mentioned, there are specific laws. I think it starts with, the compliance. If any of them are not doing those things, they are clearly violating the law aspect. So there are already safeguards with respect to, whether it is, labor laws or environmental laws or pollution and all. If any company is not doing any of those aspects, I think the law part is already there. It's just that they have to be aware of it and get sensitized and start complying with respect to those aspects. I think that was a very specific question. And safeguard does exist.
When these reportings, when they are made mandatory or when it is reported to the regulators, the audits that we talked about, I mean, gradually the certifications and audits, and is the company really doing what it is saying it is doing in the reports, etc. I think that will also come handy. All right. Rakesh Kumar says, has Institute of Chartered Accountants issued any framework around ESG or BRSR?
Not to my knowledge.
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah. Maybe, but I think as ESG becomes mandatory next year, so either ICAI or ICSI or any institute may come up. These are Dr.
Will come up with some guidance notes or something like that.
Non-financial disclosures.
Yes. All right. Anurag Sharma, best way to move forward with incorporating the ESG framework in one's company. I think this was the last. We have covered that.
Discussed a lot, yeah.
Yes. How can a private company obtain ESG rating? Please throw some light in the same. Can this ESG rating be traded in international market? Yeah, I think we can touch upon the ratings in this specific question.
But I would like to say that every company which has a policy of working on ESG, CSR shall not look forward for this incentives, motivations, etc. Fundamentally, you must do it as a primary inherent internal obligation rather than looking at compliance, rather than looking at doing it by force of law or regulation, though that is what drives people to do certain things. For example, I want to say this one sentence. Today we are talking about solar energy. When we talk about solar energy, the awareness is so much that what is the environmental impact of emissions from the solar panels, photovoltaic cells, cadmium, gallium, germanium, selenium, tellurium, several minerals are there. And today Chinese companies who are manufacturers are saying, I am manufacturing it using renewable energy only, not the fossil fuel. But that even hydrogen, when we are talking about hydrogen being produced using renewable energy. But the point is, solar panels themselves contain so many chemicals, so many minerals. Where are we going to dump it? Therefore, question is not about what rating you are going to get, what credit you are going to get, what financial cost reduction you are going to get, what investment you are going to get. It is about what you want to do as your company's goal. That drives the organizations, whether small or big, government or non-government, corporate or non-corporate.
Sure, that's the Dr. V, and that's the DNA part of it, or the voluntary part of it. Ajay, would you like to talk about specific on, are there any rating agencies, what exactly, how rating is done?
Rating agencies are there are a lot of rating agencies which are doing it. Like Sujit also mentioned that there is S&P, CRISIL has started doing it. Then Sustainalytics is there. So the rating agencies are there. Then the company has to choose one of them. But as Dr. Ravichandran says that the rating cannot be the whole objective of it. It will come in naturally if you start doing it, wholeheartedly with your mind and heart putting into it.
Sure. All right. So next is it's a long question, but the heart of the question, what appears to me is it feasible to carry the exercise with in-house expertise or outsourcing?
As we just discussed, I think it starts would be from in-house expertise itself, but I think at some point of the time, if there are some specific expertise is needed, I think whether it is on E or SSG part of it, of course, we have a lot of consultants, some lawyers and so on and so forth. I think depending on the organization and the granularity and the internal expertise, I think the company can take a call and avail external expertise as well. I think the start can definitely made through the internal expertise to begin with, and the team can easily make.
That's right. And depending upon the size, depending upon the complexity and all, but I think there are agencies we can really help you, and the help is also taken by the companies, and it's always helpful to take professional agencies services also if required, because ultimately you get some guidance, out of that also.
Absolutely.
That's what I think Mr. K. Satyanarayan Rao's question was. So is it to go to a consultant or do it internal or just start? So watch the recording of this video. Start anywhere. I would say start small, start low, start anywhere, and then of course keep taking professional help if required.
Beginning is half done.
Good beginning is half done, but half done is only half done. But of course, there has to be a starting point. We are a logistics company, Mr. Arvind Mittal says, and startup load, and we are doing what we could with limited resources. How can we start ESG with full focus? How to start?
Yeah, I think logistics has a good scope. We just talked about the EVs or fuel consumption, and the way they can project more. They're following all these practices. The clients will be more happy because that will be part of their reporting as well. So of course they also work with the manpower as well. So specifically some of the E and S parts will be possibly more relevant, for the logistics company. So as we just discussed, I think any industry, any company will definitely have the relevance. Of course, the focus may be slightly different, to each of these companies.
And logistics have another advantage because they can also encourage their big clients actually, when they are serving. Yeah. So at least if they suggest that we are into these kind of things now and we are dedicated to ESG, and also big clients also think if my logistic partner is saying something like that, so I need to be involved in that.
That becomes a differentiating point as well for the companies from a business standpoint as well. Again, ESG can be a business differentiating factor as well, also a point we have to keep in mind.
Sure. Some inputs on ESG benchmarking.
Yeah, I think we discussed this with respect to the various standards and various ratings, indexes.
Yeah.
I think these are the various points with respect to the
And companies can also take the peer group benchmarking also. Yeah. So you can look out your peers and see what are they doing on those aspects.
But I think for benchmarking, what will be important is like in the geography where we are, some common standards against which people start benchmarking. I mean, even if it's not regulatory, like BMSR is for listed companies. So either even small private companies, they start disclosing or measuring themselves in BRSR format and then start benchmarking. Because some common standard will have to be required for benchmarking.
Yeah, I think information is available now that most of the companies start disclosing. I think and also there's a lot of material globally as well. So if an organization really wants to benchmark, they can really do so. Of course, with these support and also help of the experts. But I think again, from a maturity curve standpoint, probably you're talking about phase 2 or a phase 3.
Yeah, I agree, because even if you don't find out this company in India, but globally definitely you will find when you can do the benchmarking, because every country and either in India or in some other country, maybe the similar industry must be doing something, so you can always find that benchmarking standards.
So Shiva Shankar asked, what is the role of social stock exchange in ESG?
Sorry,
social stock exchange.
Stock exchange as per the ESG is concerned. Anybody would like to touch upon?
Yeah, so India, I think it's yet to come, but I could see one of the steps while browsing it. because we were in the process of issuing the green bond. So
Hmm.
the Luxembourg stock exchange has this side. I mean, they have carved out a social stock exchange also, so where you can get your ESG or green bond listed. So I think these are the concepts which slowly will come in play. But otherwise, the bottom line again the same, that the moment you start doing it, then these kind, you'll find a lot of these going forward. But globally you can find some of them.
Sure.
But ICSA came out with a special issue of its chartered secretary on social stock exchanges. I think probably December 2021, if my memory is correct. It completely covers the entire aspects of social stock exchange across the globe.
Very good. Oh.
Sure. Oh, that will be a nice read.
And I can also because there's a gift city which has been incorporated in Gujarat, right? So they have created a stock exchange which is called IFSC. So where you can you can global bond, or you can USD denominated bond, or the euro denominated bond, you can get it listed. So there also they have prescribed some guideline for the ESG rated bond, that kind of thing. So it will come in India domestic market also, but globally it is very, very prevalent.
All right. So do you see, Rupesh Janas, do you see allocated spend for ESG just like CSR fund for ESG?
I don't think if the company is spending it for its own obligations, its own people, I don't think it can be captured as a CSR expenditure at all. It is anything that is required to be done in the normal course of business. It is for its own businesses, its own purposes, including scope 3. It will never come as a CSR expenditure.
Yeah, sure.
And just to add that, I mean, please don't look at it as a cost center. This is going to be a profit center, because this will create your brand value also, right? Help you to put your brand name in different position, right? So this is, I mean, 2% money which companies have been regulated or mandated to give to CSR also matters, but then what you do with 98% also matters, right? So that from that standpoint, I will recommend that start looking at that from the profit center point of view.
No, but see, Sumit, the point here is that CSR itself is an ESG actually. ऐसा नहीं है कि वो नहीं है. CSR has been made mandatory in our country, so we think about the obligation and all. But look at the countries where the CSR is not mandatory. That's nothing but ESG actually. If they are doing any CSR activities, of course, we say that we cannot do for our own purposes, and ESG we can do for our own purposes. But whatever we are doing for communities, whatever we're doing for environment outside, it can come under CSR as well as ESG both. You can take the advantage of that.
The social aspect will be enhanced. Whatever activities or initiatives under the social bucket, what you show, of course, you'll use that funds, and that will enhance the image of the company.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whatever internally you do it for your own company, it cannot be captured as a CSR. For example, stubble burning. Some companies are engaged in providing a lot of equipment to cut control and all. So air pollution is reduced, spreading is reduced. So that is, of course, a CSR activity. That is for the whole of the world outside your company.
Okay, so Mr. Sanjay Reddy is asking, give us one standard which small companies can follow. Tell us, if a company wants to voluntarily do something, what can the small company, which standard to follow? Just give us one standard.
I think सबसे पहले अपने आसपास देखो. The best is to look at neighbor side. जहाँ आपका plant या आपकी factory उसके आसपास देखो, उसके आसपास की community को, पेड़ लगाने को, societies को. You can start from there actually, and then you can move forward.
I think also the question is which reporting what they have to follow. I think then I would say check that SEBI's BRSR report and see whether can be used. I mean, that's a good start. Daisy as well.
Yeah, and voluntarily you can look at the listed companies requirement, and try to follow that.
That's a pretty good report, I must say.
Yeah. Okay, and let me see if there's any other question.
No.
I think pretty much we are done. I think there's one long question. Let me, I'll just publish it, and panelists, if you can just read and see what is the heart of the question, and can you please see, it's a long question. I'm not able to get the gist of the question. Would anybody like to or can understand what exactly is he talking about? And
whose question is this? Anonymous attendee, you saying?
Yeah. I would ask the panel in this situation where strict action is required, why it is expected that industries will...
These are three major pillars of sustainability is now in the limelight because it is expensive. We used to talk climate change, but it is evident.
Not very clear, I think, unless somebody has any thoughts around it. I'm not very clear. So I think
what they're talking about is that, if you are not doing something, so what kind of actions or what kind of a, commitment, which is, so as of now.
I think I got a question. I think you're talking about industries which is violating, what are the actions being taken by the government. I think it falls back to the point where there are, laws which are there. And if you see, the NGTs, High Court and Supreme Court are taking, strict action. I think the question or concern could be, it has to be even more tougher. So of course, I think in India, I mean, we have to see that, that kind of strict actions on some of those violations. And there is always a debate between punitive action vis-a-vis the, the financial damages. I think most of the time now NGT is, imposing severe crores of, damages. So I think that is the point what, the queries want to raise. I think we are seeing it happen through judiciary, but definitely enforcement from government also can be more. I think that we have to see. The laws are there. I think the enforcement can be even more stronger.
Sure. Mr. Narayan Rao is asking, is safety of employee part of ESG?
Safety, yes, of course.
Yes.
The social.
The ESG part covers, the well-being and safety of the employees and even the contractors.
Google companies publishing their reports, ESG reports. Where can people look up to them?
Their websites as well. I think most of the
they're
publishing in their
top 500 companies website or top 100 companies website. You will find
a lot of websites have ESG sections now. I also noticed that you'll be able to get that. Okay.
Sustainability they give.
Or
in some of the companies may have it in their own annual report only. I think, but it's all available in the respective website.
I follow on question that are we supposed to submit the ESG report? Like if it's a voluntary report, I mean listed companies, VRS are stock exchanges. But if it's a voluntary standards are being followed, where can we publish it or where can we report it? I think you answered annual reports, right?
Yeah. You can always do an annual report.
Yeah, give it a wider publicity. Yeah, I think pretty much we are at the end of the session. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, panelists, for taking your time out. Thank you for the extended time that you gave. I think it was an amazing session. I learned a lot during the session. I learned a lot prior to the session while really preparing or doing my own research work. And I think thank you, audience, for coming in great numbers and staying put, despite that time. We will, Complinity will keep coming up with more webinars month on month. Keep write to us for what more ideas or what other compliance issues or compliance topics that you feel Complinity should be talking about, and we will gather experts around that topic and put up a panel discussion. And this also will be this was a recorded session. It will be available on YouTube on the Complinity channels. Please go subscribe to the channels, and we'll also send out mailers. And for people who express their interest in further exploring Complinity, our teams will reach out to you for demos. So thank you very much. Thank you, Samit, Ajay, Dr. Ravi Chandran, Shujat, for a wonderful session. And
thank you, Sumit, for this opportunity. Actually, we also learn a lot with the cross, because other panelists and then cross learning and all, everything happens. So I think it was a great session. Thank you so much, and thanks for all.
Thank you so much, Sumit. You said experts at the beginning, but I wanted to correct. We are all students. So it was a great learning.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Sumit.
Thank you.
Wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
bye.